From Vermont Public, this is The Frequency. I'm Sabine Pooks. It's Friday, June 27th, and here are today's headlines. Copley Hospital in Morrisville will close its labor and delivery unit after November 1st. A state-commissioned report last year recommended that all existing obstetric sites in Vermont remain in place in the short term, including at Copley. The next closest hospital with a childbirth unit is 45 minutes away. That's concerning for Vicki Rich, a nurse who leads childbirth classes in the area and provides breastfeeding support.
It's just so heartless and so short-sighted, in my opinion. And we're going to get the worst of the worst. You're only going to get the people that can't get where they're wanting to go or a home birth gone south.
Hospital leaders have cited unsustainable long-term costs and declining birth rates in their decision. According to its website, the hospital is currently fundraising to build a fourth operating room. A new study from the University of Vermont finds the state's plastic grocery bag ban has been successful. Researchers surveyed hundreds of Vermonters, and they found self-reported weekly plastic bag use was down 91%. Meanwhile, the study found that outlawing plastic bags did not dramatically increase the use of paper bags, which come with a 10-cent fee. Emily Bellarmino is an author on the study.
What we hypothesize people are doing is switching to reusable bags or finding other ways to transport their items.
Bellarmino says that could be carrying items by hand or in cardboard boxes. She says this study shows these kind of state or town-wide bans can be good ways to get single-use plastics out of our waste stream and out of the environment. Recent record-breaking heat in our region has raised the temperature of fresh bodies of water, including Lake Champlain, which on Tuesday reached 71 degrees. Hot days and nights in warm waters are just the kind of conditions cyanobacteria prefer. Those bacteria are always present in fresh water, but at times like these can bloom into blue-green clusters that are toxic to people and pets. Peter Isles works at the state's Agency of Natural Resources. He says warmer nights, which are becoming more common due to human-caused climate change, are a direct contributor to blooms.
So when you have these really calm conditions, you're increasing their supply of nutrients. You kind of are giving them all the conditions they need to dominate.
Another cause of blooms is fertilizer. Isles says fertilizer that gets into rivers and lakes is actually a much larger factor than climate change alone. And city councilors in Burlington this week unanimously approved an $107.1 million budget for fiscal year 2026. 7 Days reports that the budget shrinks the size of Burlington's city government, using a mix of cuts and tax increases to close a nearly $10 million budget gap. Balancing that budget meant laying off 18 staffers and eliminating 7 vacant positions in what the newspaper calls, quote, the first major shrinkage of the city workforce in over 10 years. Coming up, a remembrance of Stan Baker, an LGBTQ activist who paved the way for marriage equality in Vermont. That's after this.
Thanks for listening to The Frequency, where support comes from VITA, supporting business growth and innovation in the Green Mountain State. From agriculture to manufacturing, energy to food production, find solutions that turn your business dreams into reality. Visit VEDA.org and see how VITA can help make it happen.
A key figure in the marriage equality movement died on Monday. Stan Baker was the lead plaintiff in the Vermont Supreme Court case Baker versus Vermont. In that case, the court decided that Vermont's marriage laws discriminated against same-sex couples, and as an alternative, the state created civil unions, which became legal almost exactly 25 years ago, on July 1st, 2000. The state would legalize marriage for same-sex couples almost a decade later. Vermont Public's Michaela Lafrac brings us this remembrance of Stan Baker.
Stan and his partner, Peter Harrigan, got involved in the lawsuit over rights for same-sex couples for a simple reason.
The reason we got in the lawsuit is because we fell in love. And we wanted to have a way for our friends and our family to come together and celebrate that, but also to celebrate there was a legal connection between us.
In 2019, Baker spoke on Vermont Edition about the court decision that bears his name. He shared memories of that fraught time, like sitting in the Vermont State House in Montpelier as people spoke out against civil unions.
Listening to a lot of people telling you how horrible you are can be taxing. And yet it was an incredibly impressive process to see Vermonters from both sides showing up and expressing their views as deeply as they did.
That magnanimity was classic Stan, says Susan Murray. She was one of the lawyers who represented him and Harrigan and the two other couples in the case.
He was so articulate and so courageous in the face of some pretty awful things that were said about him and death threats that he received. But he never said anything bad about the people he was receiving those threats from.
Baker, a resident of Shelburne, was a deeply spiritual person. He held leadership roles with the Episcopal Diocese of Vermont and the Cathedral Church of St. Paul in Burlington.
I think that kind of faith in humanity carried him through.
In the Baker decision, the Vermont Supreme Court ruled that the state's marriage laws were discriminatory. The legislature came up with an alternative: civil unions. The Civil Unions Bill ignited an opposition movement called Take Back Vermont. Here's Susan Murray again.
Back when we started, there was overwhelming opposition to the concept of two people of the same sex being able to get married. The law sends a message about what's valuable and what's important, and civil unions law and then the marriage law sent those messages, certainly to people in Vermont and I think around the country.
David Moats remembers that time well. He won a Pulitzer Prize in 2001 for his editorial about civil unions in the Rutland Herald. He interviewed Baker, Harrigan, and the other four plaintiffs for his book, Civil Wars, A Battle for Gay Marriage.
He was a super gentle person and a super strong and articulate person, and the choice of plaintiffs was a key thing. They had to stand up to it. They had to be able to stand up to the fire and be firm in their convictions. And Stan was that kind of person.
Harrigan and Baker had a civil union in 2000. They got married 10 years later. Baker was a practicing psychotherapist, and he spoke about the lawsuit in classrooms and spiritual groups regularly. When Baker came on Vermont Edition in 2019, he drew a connecting line between current partisan divides and what he lived through during the early days of the marriage equality movement.
I would like to just recommend what we did in the Freedom to Marry movement, which was to tell our stories, meet our neighbors, and listen to their stories. And if there's mutual listening of stories, some of that tension goes away. And I think if people can listen in the same way now, we might be able to move forward.
Baker died from an apparent heart attack while on a trip to Kentucky with his husband. He was 79. For Vermont Public, I'm Michaela Lafrac.
Thanks for listening to The Frequency today. We had additional reporting from Lexi Krupp, Abigail Giles, Mary Angish, and Nathaniel Wilson. Today's episode was edited by Liam Elder Connors, and our music is by Blue Dot Sessions. I'm Sabine Pooks. We'll be back on Monday with more Vermont news.
Planet Money helps you understand the economy. We find the people at the center of the story.
Garbage in New York, that was like a controlled substance.
We show you how money influences everything.
Tell me what you like by telling me how you spend your money.
And we dig until we get answers.
I had a bad feeling you were going to bring that up.
Planet Money finds out. All you have to do is listen. The Planet Money Podcast from NPR.